Welcome everyone. This is Dan coming to you from the today we're coming to you from the studio at 502 Power Yoga. Very important place to me, and I'll get around to explaining that in a minute. I want to say coming to you from the wood shop at DTM Enterprises, but that is not where we're at today. So let me get these little commercials out of the way real quick. Just want to make sure you guys know to go out to spiritualunderground.org. That's where we have show notes and a website to support this podcast. Contact me pages on there so that you can email me with any questions, any feedback. I invite your feedback on the podcast. The music around this is produced by a guy named Darren Frank. I want to make sure we give him musical credit. And the last little commercial I have today is 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. That is a book written by a man named James Christopher Cohn here from Louisville, Kentucky, and it's on Amazon. So if you're interested in what that's done is made these previously, the 12 steps have really just been accessible to those with the isms, the gamblers, the alcoholics, the addicts, those kind of people. And what this book is doing is opening up 12 steps to everybody, so that these tools, really the tools that are available in 12 steps will work for anyone. You do not have to have a ism, so to speak, in order to access them. So once again, it's 12-Step Spiritual Recovery at Amazon. It's available in hard copy and on Kindle. So why I am here today, it's just become apparent to me that that there are a lot of people in my periphery that are on a recovery journey that are not the same one that I found. I found my recovery through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it brought me, in the beginning, it was just a way to stop drinking and using dope. What it comes to now is actually a way for me to live, and some operating principles that I can operate with, and have really, a life that I couldn't even imagine. I've said over and over, if I'd have written a script coming into 12 steps and said, here's the things I want, I would have sold myself short. I would have no way been able to write a script that would have adequately described what I have in my life today. And one of the things that happened through that was coming into contact with this very yoga studio, and developing a yoga practice of my own, which actually which really took my recovery to a new level once I started doing that. Again, I didn't know it, and at the time, I was just kind of felt like I was stumbling along. Actually, I got tricked into coming here. While we sit here, there's a program next door that's called that's actually happening right as we sit. That is Y12SR, and it combines the 12-step of the 12-step philosophy with a yoga practice, and brings the two things together. And a friend of mine invited me to come here, and actually she when she invited me to come, she told me that I was just going to have to trust her. It was around my birthday, and she said, I'm going to take you someplace. I'm not going to tell you where we're going. I just want you to trust me. And man, that was tough. And as it got to be just a few days out from the date when we were coming, I finally ended up having to ask, and I did. I trusted. I just trusted, and I said, you at least have to tell me what I need to wear, because I didn't know if we were going out to eat and I needed a tie or what. And when she said just wear like gym shorts and a t-shirt, I thought we were getting massages. I thought that's what we were maybe doing. And she pulled up over here to CVS across the street where we're not supposed to park, and got two yoga mats out of the back of her trunk, and she was right, because if I could have bolted at the moment, I probably would have. It was way outside my comfort zone, was to come to a yoga studio. And just to kind of fast forward that, we'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit as we talk to the interview Kat today. I went out of town and had an experience in Japan, and I come back, and for whatever reason, I don't have any idea. I walked in, when I got off the airplane, I knew I was going to sign up for that 40 for 40 deal and begin a yoga practice. It was just in my heart. I have no idea how that happened and why I come off of that trip out of town. And I did, and like that was a little over 2 years ago, I think now. And as they say, like the rest is history. And just actually almost 2 months ago today, it'd be 2 months ago in a couple days. I graduated from 502 Power Yoga's 200-hour yoga teacher training class, which is another one of these just accelerated my recovery and my life, and brought me new tools, and just had me. It was like a boot camp on the spiritual journey. Another another level up, using like gamer terms or something. So, circling back, I saw that Kat was, she had shared during the teacher training about how yoga had changed her, and where she was, I guess I'm putting words into her mouth for a moment, but I'll just go with it for a minute, was at one point was wandering around a little lost and didn't know what to really do and where to go, and she came to recover her true spirit through a yoga practice. So that's why I've invited her on the show today. I really want to branch out and see about these other people who are finding themselves and learning to get in touch with their inner self, the real true spirit, through various practices. In that 12-step spiritual recovery book I was talking about a minute ago, we have an 11th step in a normal 12 in the normal 12 steps. It says to continue to improve our conscious contact with the God of our understanding, with our higher power, through a practice of prayer and meditation. Well, like this new 12 step that my sponsor, and it's getting really sticky when you talk about rewriting something that is that ingrained in that documented as what the 12 steps are, is that it's through prayer, meditation, and other practices. Like, and he doesn't go on, but when you read into it, he talks about the yoga and talks about a whole bunch of other places where we can go delve into a deeper connection with ourselves, really, whether that's through the thought of a higher power outside or through the inner self. I'm not sure those two things are any different. I think it's a perception. But anyway, that's what that's why we're sitting here today. So I know I'm really good at running my mouth. I could take over the microphone, but what I want to do first is welcome Kat. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast.
Hi everybody, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here today. So like when I'm doing a recovery podcast, I ask somebody what the way we start is what their sobriety date is. That's a real important date. So I'll just stumble along here. I know it'll work out exactly the way it's supposed to, so I have no fear there whatsoever. So I will just let you begin. And if you want to start...
Man, you said what's the sobriety date? And actually when you were talking earlier about the book that's for people that aren't in any sort of AA program, but like they have or they don't have an ism, I was thinking, like, for me, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not a gambler, I'm none of those things, maybe slightly addicted to technology, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that my addiction was like concern for looking goodism. Like, I'm going to go ahead and call it that. Like, there was a lot of, like, I was addicted to being perceived as doing the right thing. Yeah. So I actually could probably find a date of my first day of sobriety, which was the date that my former business partner, who helped me found 502 Power Yoga, Sarah Smith, I was in our very first teacher training at the studio, going through the work, learning the same things that Dan just learned a couple of months ago. And she used the word authenticity. Yeah. And I'm sure I had heard the word before. Like, it's a commonly used word. But for some reason, the day that we talked about it, or maybe there was some journaling work that was behind it, or maybe it had been presented in class, I don't know what it is, but like something struck me. And it was like, this is what has been missing. This is what, like, there's something just like discordant about my life. Something's not right. I feel a little unsettled. I'm not happy. I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden that word authenticity, it was like, that's it. I'm trying to do these things that please others, and I'm not living according to my own authentic true north, my true self. So yeah, sometime in like 2000, what would that be? 2014 maybe?
Our sobriety dates would be very close to one another.
That's when I got sober. For being concerned about what people think.
Yeah, that's and I lean on a recovery date kind of thing, rather than, even though it was the last time I took a drink, and at the time that was what my goal was to stop, right? But now looking back, that was where I turned the corner. Where it was almost like an awakening. Yeah. Where you went, like you said, that word authenticity landed on you, and you were struck by it.
There's a shift. I mean, it's like a watershed. It's like this, creek is going this one way, and then all of a sudden there's something that gets in the way that just shifts the entire trajectory. Yeah. And it might be a shift that you choose. It might be a shift that chooses you. Yep. And it might even just be like, for me, I think it was just some I was ready for it. Like I was looking, I was searching for like, what is it that's not right? And had I not been searching, I probably would have continued on in my trajectory of pleasing everybody, doing all the things that were expected of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you use that word trajectory. I use that a lot now. I'll use the word authenticity a lot today, integrity. Mm-hmm. And then some of that, and now I don't really know because I know I picked a lot of it, that language up. I know I fell in love with True North, mm-hmm. that whole thought, that whole True North alignment. And I look at it as like some kind of internal compass needle inside of me where I'm constantly doing a course correction mm-hmm. when things aren't. And when I'm in my True North, it's like there's no mistaking that either. The joy that's included when my needle is pointing north and I'm on that path. I feel it when I'm sitting here behind the microphone. I just feel it. Mm-hmm. And when I'm doing certain other things, and now I have a way I never had any terms to wrap around that. You know what I mean? I didn't have any real words that would land as I tried to explain my feelings around it. And that True North alignment just landed.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like when we have a really good ohm in the studio.
Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the ohm.
Yeah, they are.
Dan makes them out of wood. They're beautiful. But the ohm is it's a universal sound, and every now and then if you get like just this really great vibration and like you're in sync with that vibration, you just suddenly feel this like connection to this deeper current in the universe. Yeah. And I think that that's sort of what happens when all of a sudden you're lined up with your true north, you're doing the things that serve your deepest authentic self. Like it just feels good. It just feels right.
Yeah.
And it's in a way that you can't really explain it because it isn't always easy. I think that's probably the hardest part about it, is that the things that make me feel the most authentic, most authentically myself, are usually some of the hardest things that I've had to do. Like I had to go through a divorce from my ex-husband, which we can go into a little bit more detailed. But I mean, that was something that was incredibly challenging and took me years to even come to that decision. And even in doing so, there was always that deeper undercurrent of being connected to doing what's the right thing for me. Yeah,
what's right for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So most of the time when we're talking here, I can usually get people to go back and thinking, like, one of the things I heard you say, and it made me like I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin. For whatever reason, like when you were saying needing people to like me or accept me, or you said something about an image thing where I needed to look good, whether if that's physically or look good, for people. Mm-hmm. That I can usually trace that back to some things when I can remember some specific episodes, and we did some exercises like that in teacher training of going back and looking to see where like these events happened in our lives I would like to tell you that stuff don't bother me anymore. When I got to a certain point, these things from when I was a kid and different events that happened that, and I think we all go through them. If you grew up and you were immune to all that, that's like lotto winner kind of thing. Because that's just what life is. And when another great thing I'll probably talk about this a bit was the Finding Joe, is that the name of the movie, about the Joseph Campbell movie, and that hero's journey thing where you're just going to be doing these challenging things like the divorce. You're going to have these things where you're going to have events in your life. Buddha would say that life is suffering. Now, I don't really subscribe to like it is, but it certainly contains some. There are bumps in the road that we're going to have to figure out how to get by. Mm-hmm. And some of those ones when I was a kid, I didn't have the tools I have today to move through them. And I didn't have teachers, like I say, this is not a blame game either, but my parents were fantastic parents, but I just didn't get the tools, and also I didn't know how to ask for the help when I was little either. To allow, there probably was a lot of people around would help me manage some of the things I was running into when I was a kid, but I couldn't ask for the help. I didn't know how to do that. And some of the stuff was embarrassed me. I thought something was wrong with me.
Right.
Yeah. So to circle back around, I don't know. That's what I like to do is get talking about in recovery circles when we speak of what it was like what all the stuff was like. What happened was usually your event, like you just said about coming in, whatever happened and how that landed, and then like what it's like now. So that's the other thing I always like to want to talk about is the miracles. So look at like the things that shaped us, the events that like made the real turning point. Mm-hmm. And then the miracles is what I call them, is the things that are happening in our lives today now that we move past that pivotal event.
So the thing that happened, like this, so this was work that we did in teacher training, right? So Dan did this work too, where we all have these self-limiting beliefs, these beliefs about ourselves that we tell them to ourselves, and we sort of learn to believe them, and we make that sort of a label, like on my forehead, like this is who I am. And it usually stems from something that happened when you were small. And it's actually pretty amazing and miraculous that I've now witnessed 6 teacher trainings, and it's absolutely true. There's always something that happened when you're small, and small can mean anything from like a baby until like middle school, but like the impressionable years that you decide, like something happens that makes you decide something about yourself. And so for me, I was in 5th grade, and I had a best friend, and one day on the playground, my best friend dumped me, basically. She walked up to me and she said, well, you're not cool, so I'm going to be friends with Bryn now. And that was the beginning of cliques and hierarchy in school, and all of a sudden I had been... somebody had decided that I was going to be a dork at school. And, I kept looking at my environments. I looked at, like, I got my ears pierced. Like, maybe that's why I'm not cool, because my ears aren't pierced. Maybe I'm not wearing the right clothes. Maybe it's because I wear glasses. I'm going to start wearing contacts. Like, I started to do all these things, trying to understand, like, what had cast me into dorkdom. Like, what is it about me? And I just became completely immersed in concern for what everybody thought about me. And being concerned about it did not change anything. I continued to be a dork. I continued to be made fun of. I was bullied. I had a really wonderful group of friends that were bullied alongside of me, but we were all the intelligent, the do-gooders, the ones that all the teachers really liked, but that, of course, made us the target for being teased. So at that time, I made it mean that I was not likable. And even to this day, I'm 38 years old, and I still think that about people sometimes. Like, well, this person is a cool person. I am a dork. Therefore, we shouldn't get along. And I still have those thoughts. But what I have now is like that light has been shined on that moment and what I've made that mean. And then like I see that happens. And I don't know if it's like that at all for recovery, but it's sort of like it comes up, the action happens, and I'm like, oh wait, that's right. That was something really stupid that happened in 5th grade. I'm making it rule my life, and I'm letting it make all these decisions for me. When the reality of it is that I am who I am. I'm maybe a little kooky, and the reality is that people actually like me the way that I am.
Right.
It's turned me into somebody that is just a little bit off kilter, a little bit, I don't know, like I think that there's something about me that is just a little different. Like, I always like to say that everybody at the studio that we're like the island of misfit toys.
Yeah. And
I think that was me. I was on the island of misfit toys, and I had other people on the island with me. And I kept trying to get off the island, like, for my whole life. Like, what do I need to do to be like everybody else? What do I need to do to get, like, this type of person to like me? When deep down, like, I actually just needed to be myself and find all the other people that were going to be on the island with me and be a little bit different like me. And so once I got clear on that through the word authenticity, like, seriously, just in my face, authenticity, like, oh, gosh, that's what's wrong. That's what I need. It was just like I shed all these layers that had built up over the years of like what other people expect. And I started to just uncover myself. For me, it was not my teacher training, but it was one of the teacher trainings. We had a big celebration at the end of the teacher training with lots of dancing and music. And it was like 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, and I was dancing my butt off with no concern at all for what anybody thought. I can't dance at all. Me in high school, I was the one standing on the side with my arms crossed, concerned for like looking foolish in front of everybody. Yeah. And I just realized that I stopped caring. I stopped worrying about what other people thought, and it actually turned into this like freedom that I didn't know was possible. I don't know if I've gotten to the miracle. I guess that's the miracle. Is the freedom that I've found.
That's where the miracle. I think that's like where some people say, like when the cracks start allowing the light in. Mm-hmm. And you start actually being like embracing it rather than like fighting it. I hear a lot of stuff that's just total parallel with what we find. Because of that same. And as I was in teacher training, I'm sitting there going with constantly looking at like how this paralleled exactly like what 12 steps is, in a way that it's a set of tools that allows you to go back and look at this stuff that made me who I am today, so that I can actually see it and, like you said, tell myself, I go, oh, that's that again. That is not really me, and I can, sometimes I'm better at that, and other times, no matter really how big the crisis is, right?
Right.
If I go into that total fight or flight kind of thing where I've lost myself for a minute, but today I have tools that pulls me back in, and that's the same thing as what we've done. And fact of the matter, for like a guy like me, those things, like those events, like once I found like alcohol, that fixed that not being able to fit in. That's the word I was hitting on when, as you were talking, is that this thing where I was constantly wanting to be a part of, but always felt that I was outside of it. Mm-hmm. I liked what this. Always like I vacillated between being better than and less than. And what that did is kept me away from you. Mm-hmm. I would think, well, I'm just smarter, I'm better, and then the flip side of it, well, I'm a nerd, and so I'm constantly like vacillating, and I couldn't just be me. I would always have to be something that separated me from everybody else.
You were in comparison instead of just being.
Right, yeah, mm-hmm. Yep, and looking for the differences rather than looking for the similarities,
the connections.
Yeah, and we're all, like you were saying, that island of misfit toys kind of thing. And to use Baron Baptiste's words, is we're all a little perfectly imperfect, right? That's the fact of the matter.
Yeah, I love that.
And just having to be okay with that, and like embracing my own imperfections and yours too, so that we can smile about them. And that's what recovery's done is pulled those layers of all this bullshit off of me.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
All the stories I'm telling myself. That was the big theme. I think that was a big theme on at least the teacher training I went through, was the lies, the stories that I'm telling myself. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to use. I have weekend after next. I have a men's retreat coming up, my 6th one. That's one of my miracles, is that not only I not attended 6 men's retreats, I have hosted. I'm 4 years sober. And I've hosted 6 men's retreats, and that's going to be my theme. I always try to do some kind of theme. I actually put together programming around it, things to do, not just go hang out. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be my theme this year, pulling a lot of things from my yoga teacher training. Do that. I was like taking notes and using some of that, and we're going to be doing morning yoga.
Good.
And I'm introducing that into my retreats that I'm having. Morning meditation and yoga to bring the lies we tell ourselves, these stories that we tell ourselves that aren't true, and we get hung up on. That's my theme this year.
I love it.
And you said that like not being able to fit in, and you were talking about like that was more than an event. That was a time frame where you struggled to. Did you ever feel even back then that you ever broke out of that, or was that a constant? Was that something that stayed with you? I brought that into my adulthood, the same kind of thing of the not fitting in and really just not knowing where I fit. There's like some kind of hole I was never able to like fill, and I would hang around with certain people in order to try to, nope, not here, and then go try to hang out with other people and go, well, nope, these are not my people either.
See, for me, I think that I always... I was sort of like in a drift, like a drifting from person to group of friends without choosing, without, I don't feel like I had a powerful choice. Like even my group of friends from college, I look back and it's like, why did I hang out with them? We had nothing in common. And it was just like, they lived on the same floor as me, my freshman year.
Proximity.
And it was just easy. Like I was always just sort of like going with, I want to say going with the flow, but that I think that's more spiritual way of saying it. This was more of taking the easy way out and not really knowing what it is I wanted, and just allowing the universe to like make decisions for me.
Like a life of convenience.
Yeah.
Almost just this is convenient to me, and
this is convenient. This works. A girl I lived with in Los Angeles was, we met, and I thought, okay, well, I don't really get along, like I don't really feel a good vibration from her, but she seems like good on paper, and so I'll live with her. And of course it ended up being a pretty terrible living situation. And same with my ex-husband. It was like he checked all the boxes. He had a good job, and he was handsome, and he did all these, he checked all the boxes. And I was at that age where I was supposed to be getting married, and it just sort of fell into place, even, and any sort of red flags that would pop up along the way, I would sort of ignore them. Mm-hmm. Not wanting to disrupt any sort of ease or drift. So that the drift just sort of took me where it wanted. And I don't know, I feel like I just woke up when I heard that word authenticity, and it was like, oh, I can actually get to know myself on a deeper level, and I can use that knowledge to make choices that align with what it is I want. I can like actually create things. I can disrupt this drift. I can start to cause some change and make something happen that is something that I want to happen. I can choose the people I want to be with.
Yeah.
I can actually marry somebody who makes me really excited and happy, and like is somebody that I always imagined myself with, but doesn't necessarily check the boxes,
Right, yeah. Yeah. Well, some of that, we talk a lot about being programmed, and society told me that by a certain age I should be getting married, and the thing of, hunting for the good, secure job. Mm-hmm. And walking these, like, kind of similar to the checking the boxes, like you were saying, it's mm-hmm. time to do this. You got out of high school, you went to college. That's just what you did. And I didn't really. Most of the time, I was not walking the path that society told me. I didn't go to college right out of high school. Mm-hmm. What had happened to me, is that I started finding that the substances covered up all those insecurities that I had about not fitting in. And, all of a sudden when I was inebriated, I could be the life of the party. I could dance like nobody was watching, like you were saying, and I could do that stuff with those substances in me. And then they ran off with me, because as with most outside things, it becomes a thing where the same quantities don't get you where you need to be as they did last time.
Yeah.
And so then you start having to do more of them and different ones, and adding them together, and in order to get to where you were last time, and it becomes a chase that takes you down a path you just don't know that you're even, I had no idea I was being drugged down that path.
Yeah. I started drinking when I was 18, and I remember like there was a cognitive like light bulb that went off. Like, I can, like, first of all, my friends think it's really cool that I'm drinking. I waited a lot longer than everybody else to start drinking. Yeah. So when I finally did have my first drink, it was like, woohoo, Kat's drinking, let's all celebrate. And I got a little bit of a little high from that. Like, ooh, people like this.
Yeah. They're celebrating me.
And then there was the discovery of like, oh, when I'm drunk, I don't actually care as much. So like, I will go dance if I'm drunk. I will do this if I'm drunk. I can say the things that I would normally feel uncomfortable saying because I'm drunk, and I don't care as much. And I did. I'd stopped drinking for like 7 months. I think it's been about a year or so, but I was kind of I had gotten really aware of that, like, oh wow, I'm using alcohol as like an access to doing these things that I really just don't need it.
Yeah.
Like, now that I have these other tools and these awarenesses and the light that shine on who I am, and I don't care as much, like I actually don't need alcohol to be able to dance like a fool in the middle of the day on a Sunday with a bunch of people I barely know. Like, so that was an interesting awareness too, that like I started, I think, to go down that path of depending on alcohol to make me feel like I was comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that I don't need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there is a genetic component that they've proven that if you have this in your history and your family history that you're more liable to fall that direction. I think you can still, you can actually just do it just because of the same kind of hooks that get you, just because, like you said, you feel authentic.
Right.
It's not true.
Right. It's just like numb. I don't know exactly what happens, but it's more of just like it numbs the parts of you that give a shit.
Yeah. It takes all it releases your inhibitions, and you'll do things that you wouldn't have normally done. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you found that. So you said you've like just for a year or so now that you've like recognized that and done something about it. Did I hear that?
I mean, I stopped drinking on Thanksgiving of 2000. What year are we in? 2019. I guess it was 2017. And I just my husband doesn't drink. My new husband.
And you were with him. This probably was. Am I also hearing that this happened together? Like you were with him, and it just didn't feel right.
He was sober when I met him, so he's. I've never seen him drink a drop of alcohol. He was a big fan of the bourbon, but he. I'm not sure. It didn't have much to do with him. He doesn't mind that I drink, but he. I had a couple of beers one night, and I just got really emotional. And like kind of silly. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stop. Like alcohol is not serving me in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't know how long I was gonna go on a break. I ended up going 7 months. So it was the following summer at my grandmother's memorial service that I had a glass of wine and reintroduced it. But like ever since I did that, I feel like there's been a more of an awareness.
Yeah.
Like when I come home from a stressful day and I feel like I want to have a glass of wine because I'm stressed out, like, oh, it's kind of like taking that pause and shining that light. Like, that's not a very healthy thing to do. So maybe I'll just have a kombucha and write in my journal instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use something else. Yeah, because I'm not in any kind of temperance movement kind of thing either. I don't have a resentment against alcohol. Now, for me, it was a really, really big problem, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't have a thing where I don't think anybody, because there's people out there can drink and not get pulled down the pike with it. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool that you've like said, okay, I'm actually doing it because of this, because I joke around once in a while, and I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm not sure just how much, people talk about like keep people that are sober alcoholics keep alcohol in their house, and I go, if you were an abstinent heroin user, would you just keep a little heroin over in the drawer, just in case somebody stopped by and wanted a little, because that'll be like this, that'll be the thing they'll say, well, somebody might come over and want a beer, so I keep some beer around, and I know it's a little different because of what society has said, mm-hmm. but because to me, I have an old guy who talks about, he says, when you look at alcohol early on, you're doing mind game stuff to try to not want it. Put a skull and crossbones on the bottle when you see it, because that's what it is to you. For you, for me, that's poison. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's gonna be like there's a lot of little cute little sayings. I'm allergic to alcohol. When I take some in, I break out in handcuffs. Things like that happen to me when I drink, and I don't know when I take the first drink of alcohol. I really don't know where that's going to lead me, because I have this thing called we call it an allergy. It's a thing where once I have a little, I have trouble controlling how much I'm going to drink. I will say I'm only going to have one. I'll try to tell myself that I'm only going to have one, and I'll be shot. I'll be drunk, and I don't like what happened. I can't. Once I get a little in me, I can't stop. Mm-hmm. So I don't keep it around. But one of the things I see, like I've had some people where they don't, and it's out of respect more so to people who are not, they just don't drink around me, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't ask them to do that. But if your husband was not drinking, I just was wondering if maybe it was a thing where, he was like, well, if he's not drinking, then I don't really need it either. Mm-hmm. And it made it, like you said, increase to your awareness of where you're using outside things. Because I think I could probably, with my addictive tendencies, there's a chance I could overuse yoga. Yeah. I can overuse lots of things, even healthy things for me, if I'm not careful. And I don't really think that's going to happen, the likelihood of that. But people will. Mm-hmm. You could end up doing one of the things, if you're having negative consequences as a result, like let's say you're going to yoga so much that you're neglecting your family, or you're missing work the next day because you're, different things. You could actually get to a point where you're doing something healthy at a negative rate. So similar kind of stories of carrying this into adulthood, and you said it's 2014, but you were toying with you'd found a yoga practice sometime.
I started practicing yoga. First time I started going regularly was when I lived in Los Angeles in 2000. I think it was 2007. I started practicing at Santa Monica Power Yoga, which was Brian Kest owned studio, so not a Baptiste yoga studio, which is what we are. It was a different type of power yoga. It was still vigorous, still sweaty, still a vinyasa type sequence, so flowing and linking movement with breath. It's just a couple blocks from my office, and a girlfriend invited me to go with her. And
so you were working in LA at this point? I
was working in
You were
LA.
out of college and had taken a job in LA.
Yes. I was in my early 20s, mid-20s, something like that. And I loved it. I mean, I loved how I felt after class. It was crazy hard. I could see people around me doing things that I could never even imagine being able to do with my own body.
Yeah.
And I would just leave completely wrung out, like a sponge that had been squished, and all this stuff had come out of me, and like I was sweaty, and I was dating my ex-husband at the time, and I came back to his apartment. I was just like, that was amazing. You should try it. And they laughed, and they're like, yoga? How do you burn any calories doing yoga? And I was like, you guys need to come check it out. And I got pretty hooked and I was going only about once a week because it was a pretty big time commitment. They were only 90-minute classes available at that studio. And when I moved back to Louisville in 2010, the very first thing I did was Google Power Yoga Louisville and found nothing. So I started going to some other studios around town and dabbling. I experienced Bikram yoga for the first time. I mean, I didn't even know that there was any other kind of yoga at that time. I thought power yoga was it. I thought that was yoga. So I experienced Bikram. I did rocket yoga. I got into Ashtanga Yoga for a pretty long time, and did my first teacher training because I started to get really obsessed. I had been a runner, and I stopped. I didn't stop running, but I slowly started to practice yoga more than I was running. The running was making me injured, and the yoga was helping, so I slowly started to shift and decided to get my teacher training. Didn't think that I was going to teach yoga. I just wanted to learn more, wanted to get a more in-depth education about the history and the lineage and the philosophy. And of course, like what happens in a lot of yoga teacher trainings, you end up teaching afterwards because you're so fired up and you're so excited and you want to share everything that you've learned.
Yeah, right.
So I did start teaching, and at the time I was still practicing Brian Kest Power Yoga online. And then I took it to the Google, and I went to the Google and I typed in, Power Yoga podcast or something like that, and I found a Baptiste Power Yoga class on a podcast. Kindley McCollum's. I'll never forget. I still take her classes every now and then, and they were different. There was a message to them, and so I found myself taking these classes, and it was like, wow! Not only am I getting this like great physical practice, there's like a message. There's a spiritual connection that, again, I don't think I had realized was missing for me. That it just really spoke to me, and it started really small, like some like inquiry around like the exit door. I remember one of Kindley's classes, she talks about the exit door and how it's very common for people to want to like run as soon as something gets hard, but what's actually possible if you stay in something that's hard. I think we were in like Warrior 2, and she's holding us there forever. And I just started to get really into the Baptiste methodology at that time, and it didn't exist anywhere around town. There was no power yoga anywhere around town. The class at the studio I was teaching at, I asked the teacher to change the name to Power Yoga, and she was a little resistant, but she did it. And I just started to take...
You were teaching a class?
I was teaching a class, yeah. I taught
it. And you wanted to call it Power Yoga,
yeah.
And they really weren't really wanting to do that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was taking what I was learning from these Baptiste classes. I found more people who offered these classes on podcasts and stuff. started to like kind of say some of the things that they were saying, and I started to do some of the same sequences, which was Journey into Power, and I didn't realize that that's what it was, but I started to incorporate that into my teaching. And then in 2013, I, in the meantime, had gotten married. I was 7 months pregnant, and I met Sarah Smith, who I opened the studio with. And Sarah Smith had moved to Louisville. She had been living in Indianapolis, and she asked to join the the Louisville Yoga Instructors Facebook group, which I had started and I was managing.
Huh.
And when she asked to join the group, I clicked on her little profile to see who she was, and it said Certified Baptiste Yoga Instructor. And I got so excited. Like, to me, this is like somebody who actually knows what this Baptiste stuff is coming to Louisville, and I can ask her all these questions and pick her brain. And so the two of us had lunch. She had a 3-month-old baby at the time. I was super pregnant.
So that's kind of like the same kind. That's the miracle kind of thing. And I just don't want to interrupt you real bad, but those are the kind of things where the stars have aligned or whatever and brought you to where you were, what you were looking for, by no power of your own, right?
Totally.
Other than you were taking some actions. We do have some actions that we have to take. You were searching, you were looking, you had your eyes open.
Yes.
You saw an opportunity and you actually reached for it.
I did, yeah. And it was, like I was saying earlier, it was so hard. I knew it was the right thing to do, but it was really challenging. Because before I met Sarah, I had started to think about opening my own yoga studio.
Yeah.
I was teaching at 2 studios. I was thinking, like, I think I could do this. I think that I think this community could support a power yoga studio, but I'm pregnant. My husband is in grad school. Like, there's actually no possible way that this is going to happen. So maybe 10 years. Like, that was kind of where I was at. Like, okay, maybe when Samantha's in grade school, I'll actually bother to open a yoga studio. And then I met Sarah, and she said, my plan is to open a power yoga studio here in Louisville. And I remember that conversation. The feeling that I had was I was crushed. I wasn't excited. I was devastated.
Oh, really? Like somebody beat you to it.
She was going to beat me to it. Here was this thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That I had been... I mean, I even had a logo designed. I just had this sketch of this logo in my notebook, like, ready to go. I had a business plan. I had everything. I just didn't have the time. And here she was, ready to go. And I remember my face fell. I just felt awful. And I spent the rest of the afternoon just feeling sort of bummed. And then something Sarah had said during lunch was along the lines of, like, stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like, the sort of thing that we hear, like you and me hear all the time around the studio. But, like, to me, in that stage of my life, was pretty new to me. And the thought of stepping outside of my comfort zone, it's like, that's what I need to do. I need to ask this person if she would be willing to partner with me. And so I sent her an email and said, I want to open a power yoga studio too. Like, I know we don't know each other, but, like, let's make this happen. And we did.
Too cool.
Yeah. I'm really glad it worked out the way it did, because I would not have had the confidence, the courage, the strength to do this without having learned the Baptiste methodology. Like, so we opened the studio, and as we're opening the studio, Sarah's sort of giving me, like, a little personal boot camp on, like, some Baptiste methodology. And I did a 40 days to a personal revolution through the Baptiste website so that I could start to, like, learn some of the methodology and the language. And then I did the first teacher training after we had already been open for a couple of months. And so even though we opened it together, like, I didn't even come into my own until at least, like, maybe a year after we had opened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she knew she wanted to do a teacher training in conjunction with opening her studio. I mean, that's not a...
We needed teachers.
Yeah, that's why. That was really
why.
Well,
yeah, I mean, we needed teachers, and also Sarah's very passionate about teaching teachers. She's, she trained all the teacher trainees until she moved to South Carolina, and she led a teacher training for the Baptiste Institute down in South Carolina. She's going to be coming back here in September to lead some teacher development.
Oh, really?
It's what she's passionate about.
Yeah, very cool.
So even when we filled up our teaching team and didn't need teachers the same way we did the first year, we decided to continue leading the teacher training, or holding the teacher training, because first of all, it wasn't the program had evolved so much that it wasn't just about teaching people how to teach yoga. It had become this program of self-development, of inquiry, of leadership, of getting clear on who you are and what it is you want to create in the world.
Yeah. It provided me some clarity in that regard, and and I had a fairly solid grounding when I hit it, but it was definitely certainly a big boost in that department, no doubt. And there's a lot of people that are around me that see like the change that happened to me, because we see that in recovery. We see guys come in, and gals too, but my frame of mind is mostly men, because I'm in a men's home group, and that's really where most of my work happens, and we don't really cross that. That's just a little bit dangerous place to be. I don't go picking up newly sober girls to work with and to try to give this to. It's just not a right kind of arrangement. But to see people blossom, you watch guys come in that are dragging their heels. One of my friends says, kicking shoestrings. You're just like head down, just beat to death. You just have no self-esteem when you walk in the room in the beginning, and you watch somebody blossom. Well, the same thing happens through this process. You watch, and while I was in teacher training with people, you watched people come to life. They blossomed. They bloomed, just like what's happening in springtime now. And like, I won't see that myself, but my friends saw that happen to me too, through the teacher training, through that process of change. It's a transformational thing. Yeah. So not all. I mean, having a teacher training, because I don't really know. I'm asking questions from that. Studios don't generally have teacher trainings. Or do
These days, it is a little bit more common.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I don't hear it. And, of course, I'm only, I'm a little actually branching out a little bit here lately because of the gal I've been seeing. She's does some yoga at some different places around town, and we will do it together, and doing some hatha yoga and some other things that I always look at it from the teacher standpoint now, though. I'm like, what can I learn from being in here today? Not just going to do it, right? For a long time, I was just coming into class just to be doing yoga. Now I come into yoga classes to actually go home with something.
Yeah.
Even here.
Can I offer you a little like warning of sorts? I've learned over the years that what drew me to yoga, what attracted me to yoga, was that it helped me with anxiety, depression, self-confidence, things like that. When I turned yoga into my job, all that stuff came back.
Oh, really?
So I actually practice at another studio fairly often.
Yeah.
To be a student with no concern for loud noises or light bulbs being out or the quality of the teaching. Like,
I guess so. Yeah, right in here, you'll probably be really hard to like focus. Your probably head's in the office, or like you said, a lot of other things in moving inside your practice.
Yeah, it took me a little while. I mean, this was only like maybe in the fall of this past year. I was like, I am feeling really kind of stressed out, and people always say to do yoga, but I'm doing yoga all the time. What is it? And then I realized that my yoga practice was I was completely in my head. It was not the same quality of yoga practice that it had been when I was just a student.
Yeah.
So for any yoga teacher out there, I think that it's very tricky, because it's so good to go in and like to get ideas from other teachers and to see what works and what doesn't work. But if you
also just to go practice,
if you completely let yourself be in just student mode, like you'll still maintain those benefits.
Good point.
Of
Thank
yoga.
you for that. Yeah, I'm always learning. I can listen today.
Sometimes we do that here at the studio for teachers. We're very big on feedback, and I know you did that in your teacher training. But everybody on the teaching team, if I take Tina's class on Friday at 5:30, I give Tina feedback. Keep this, stop this, start this, or whatever it might be. And we've all agreed as a team that sometimes you just kind of want to be on your mat. And so you make that decision when you step into the room. Today, I'm going to just be a student. And sometimes that's all it takes to shift the mindset, I think, of like, oh, you know what? It's like that. It's like when you're meditating and you notice you're thinking about something else. You just like, oh, hey,
bring
look,
it back.
You just bring it right back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to be paying attention to the cues that are working and not working. I'm just going to breathe and move my body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know whether, well, I really don't, I was want to try to explain it, but I know that for me, yoga is very meditative. What happens is that when I'm actually focused, there's a point that always happens, and it's kind of almost like I don't know, like when you're watching a TV show and they like flash back to something old and it swirls or something in their back. I will like swirl, and then I'll be on my mat and there's nothing else happening around me, and I'm just practicing and I'm just listening to the teacher, and I'm not really, everything else goes. I'm not thinking about what my kids are needing to do after practice. I'm not thinking about what I have to do afterwards. I'm not thinking about what time my next podcast is or any of that stuff. And I swirl into that where I'm just totally absorbed and I'm just practicing yoga, and there's really nothing else going on.
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling, and I almost, because I can recognize it too. At the same time I can go, to my inner self, know that, yep, buddy, this is why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very special feeling. I think that's why power yoga has always like worked best for me personally, because the physicality of it,
right,
and the intensity of it, even the heat, like it does something to like sort of force you out of your mind and into your body.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point where I can move through an entire journey into power sequence and like be thinking about something else the whole time, and it's sad that it's like that, because it used to be that the physicality of it would force me to be focused. And so for me, my work is always in like noticing when I'm doing that, and like what can I do to add some intensity, add a little bit of heat, a little bit of the tapas, the discipline in Sanskrit. Sorry,
some of you just you find yourself that you're just going through the motions.
Yeah. So for me, like the harder the class, or the better, like there has to be a good flow to the class, like something about just even the pace or the rhythm that helps to trigger me into that more meditative state. Yeah. So power yoga for me is really what works. If I go to a class that's very slow paced, where there's lots of stopping and talking, or something along those lines, like I just find that I'm very distracted. And I think it's just who I am. Like it's just the way my brain works. I have a very like monkey mind, very anxious. I think a lot, and I need something to take me out of it. Yeah.
Well, you and I are alike in that regard for sure.
Yeah.
I find myself doing the same thing. I like the way the power yoga really, I didn't turn off my notifications. I want to make sure. I'm surprised it actually hasn't dinged. I don't know. I bet it's because it's not on your, I'm not plugged onto your Wi-Fi.
Oh.
That's why. That's actually a good thing to know. That's why it's not, my Mac is not getting messages. I just thought about it. That when I do stuff like yin yoga or something that's slower, where because I want to move. Now the flip side of that is I know that's outside my comfort zone stuff too. Where I'm doing something that's not what I want to do. I really love the flow and one thing I like about here too is that I never get the exact same thing. Now as a teacher though, like I know when somebody's right on the sequence too. You know what I mean? So when they're like doing that, but most of the teachers are more, newer teachers, I would just say a lot of times they're more in line with the sequence. Teachers that are been around a little longer are a little bit more creative in their sequencing and doing things that keeps me out. And I know that's one of them internal giggles that when we're doing stuff that I'm like going, that is not what's next, that's good for me to know, because that keeps my head in the game, rather than just going, because I can find myself just going through the motions when I know what the next sequence, and I'm just going along too.
There's an ability to have a meditative state of mind when you know the sequence. The studio where I actually practice Ashtanga Yoga. I'm back into Ashtanga Yoga, and
I'm not sure I know what that is.
It's a style of yoga that actually was one of the styles of yoga, one of the practices that influenced Baron Baptiste when he created Journey into Power. So it's a vinyasa based sequence. It was created in Mysore, and it's a set sequence. And so there's a couple of different series. Most people practice the primary series, and the primary series takes about 75 minutes to do the entire thing. But what's special about Ashtanga Yoga is that really different, is that it's typically practiced in what's called Mysore style. And Mysore style means that everybody has the sequence. It's the same thing every time, no matter what. Even all the breaths and like little tiny transitions between poses are all like very meticulously planned. but when you start a Mysore practice, so you, Dan, you've been practicing yoga for 2 years. You're pretty, you know the poses. You're a pretty strong practitioner. You would come in and be given like 5 sun salutation A's, 3 sun salutation B's, leave it at that, and then go home.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'd come in the rest of the week every day, and you would, everybody in their room would be doing something different. You come in whenever you can. You do your 5 sun salutation A's, your 3 sun salutation B's, and then when the teacher believes that you've mastered that, then they give you more poses.
Oh, yeah.
So you build on to it.
Interesting.
And so for me, when I first started doing Ashtanga Yoga, way before 502 Power Yoga existed, I think it took me a year to get the full primary sequence. And so then...
Interesting.
So what's interesting about it is that, like, the reason it works for me right now is because I walk into a space that's quiet, everybody's breathing, everybody's doing something different, and I just practice the sequence that I've memorized. That is really good for me mentally because it's a lot of space, it's a lot of quiet, and I don't have a lot of space and quiet in my life with a very busy business and a 5-year-old daughter. So it's really beneficial to me, but it's also really easy for me to step into automatic. Like Sunday morning, I think it was Sunday morning. Friday morning, I was in there and I was going through the motions completely in my head about something. And I think that I was even like doing the pose on the wrong side at some point, like just completely distracted. And so then in that moment, the work is to just catch myself and bring me back, come back into the present. Just harder some days than others.
Yeah. So in those, there's nobody in there calling poses. You're just coming in there doing the practice on your own. And
yeah, if anybody ever wants to come with me, love to have you join me.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to have that space and to have that time where it's like I have my practice back. Like I sort of felt like I didn't have it anymore, like I had lost it. So now I feel like I have my own yoga practice, and it's separate from my work, which is, I think, healthy for me mentally. But then I come back to 502 and I take a class that's Journey to Power, and it just feels like home. And that's the way I like to describe it. Like, I haven't made an Instagram post about this, I think. Like, it's so great to like go visit other cities and to like spend time and internationally and to experience a lot of different things. But then like you come home and there's like nothing like your own couch in your living room.
Right.
It just feels right.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel about the studio. Like, and there's, to me, like Ashtanga Yoga it's very vigorous, very, it's really hard. There's a lot of really strange poses that I'm not sure I understand. And when I practiced that before I met Sarah in Open 502, I was very flexible and I had like the biggest biceps you've ever seen. Like I was super strong. I had bulging veins, all this stuff. Like it was just in great shape, but I was still the same kind of like concerned, anxious, not sure, like going with the drift. Just, I don't know. It didn't do anything for me mentally or spiritually. It wasn't until I started practicing Baptiste yoga and I started getting these deeper lessons and like shining that mirror, having that like mirror of my mat, presented to me, like, oh wow, like I can actually do something about these things that are bothering me, and I can actually show up in a different way. And the practice of Baptiste yoga just completely shaped my entire life. Just that trajectory, go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I can say the same thing for me too. And I didn't know what we were doing in that recovery yoga was a version of it, but it was a light. And today I know that, and it needs to be for that angle of people coming in. You don't know where people are at in their recovery. They're usually don't have much on a physical practice at all. Not just yoga. They're just not in very good shape. I've said, one of my things I say is we talk of this thing about mind, body, spirit. You've heard that forever. Right, everybody's mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit. Well, the 12-step program does a really good lot for my mind and my spirit. It really does. But we're doing nothing for our bodies. Matter of fact, we're drinking lots of coffee. We're eating cookies and cake at the meetings. But people are standing outside smoking cigarettes. And doing just a lot of. Another friend of mine told me something where we talk about, we got bullet wounds and paper cuts, and in there we are dealing with the people's bullet wounds in their lives, the things that are having the huge big, so like, just keep smoking for now, right? Because don't worry about that. Let's get hold of this for now. But when I started bringing my body into this thing, because I've been pretty fortunate gene wise that I've not had an issue with like controlling my weight or anything like that. And I've always been in relatively decent shape. Although along the line, I started having some lower back issues and some neck stuff go on. I was a pain pill addict. So I somewhat want to know, I got a golden ticket once where I got an MRI and they told me I had lower back issues, which like it's a golden ticket for more pain pills. Is what I'm saying there. You're like jackpot. All right. Because that's just a constant search for opiate pain medication. And it eventually led me to starting to use heroin, but for the same reason when the pills started being hard to get, I ended up going in that direction just for a very short amount of time before I actually got sober. So that didn't really get me, thankfully. I saw some, I actually got ripped off by a heroin dealer once, and it was enough to piss me off enough that I didn't go back for more. And it stopped me. I was universe. Like, I know it. Yeah. I was like, and I think today about how silly that was, that, because people in the drug world are getting ripped off and ripping off all the time. But for me, when I got that money stolen from me and they didn't bring it back to me, screw that. I am not doing that anymore, and I think that shouldn't have happened, really, because just the way I am, but it did, and it stopped me, and it actually it bumped me enough to where I hit. Well, I don't know if you know my story on that, but I was stealing pain pills. I was breaking in homes and stuff and stealing them. That's one of the other ways I was getting them, and I got caught doing that. And I stood in front of a judge in New Albany, Indiana, that told me I was going to prison for 6 to 20 years for doing that. And that was something I couldn't accept. As the universe handed me something, and I knew I didn't have any other. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't. I was trying to handle it on my own. I still couldn't stop using and drinking, even with that going on. I was pretending to be sober for everybody who was watching, but I wasn't. I was, and most people know. You think you're hiding that, but most people know. And but I didn't know a way out, and the 12 steps was presented to me. I'd been around the program for about 4 years prior to that, and just doing it lacklusterly. We call it half measures. Half measures avail you nothing, is what we say in our stuff, and that is the truth. Until I pushed all my chips, but that forced me to push all my chips to the middle of the table because I had no other escape route but that one, and I really didn't even believe it would work. But it didn't. It was like it was prison or this. Like, what I got to lose, right? And I did this, and I ended up not spending a single day in prison. I ended up being on home incarceration for a year. That's a lot of fun, and probation and some things. And when I hit here, when I found 502, I was still. I think I might have still had to get papers signed when I came get the leader to do that. And at that point, Rebecca was leading the Y12. Went back to circle back around to that. I have never had any kind of physical practice I could keep up with in my life. I would try to start running. I would try to go to the gym, and it would be these little spurts of stuff that I just could never keep something that motivated me to return. And when I walked out of here after that very first Y12, I knew it was something that had touched me. And because by now I've had a little sobriety, and I started to get in touch with myself, and I walked out of here knowing I really like that, but I had some hang-ups. I looked at it from a standpoint that it was a female thing. It wasn't cool as a dude to be doing yoga. And I couldn't keep up with some other people too. And when I actually started coming to a couple of power yoga things, I felt really intimidated because I didn't, I wouldn't let myself off the hook. I felt that I needed to be doing it like people who had been doing it for years. That took a little bit, but I started coming. You said something about just going once a week. So that was that Y12 was once a week. It was just on Sundays. So I came back on the Sundays for probably 6 months of just coming to that. That was enough. I didn't have my own mat, and somebody ended up buying me like a Walmart, regular old one of those kind of little cheapy mats, when I finally ended up coming to actual power yoga. Yeah, you had to, right? I try to head people off and go, buy once, cry once thing. But or here, actually, what I have now is a lot of mats that I loan. I've got they're one of these addiction things that you can get addicted to yoga equipment. Have too many, have a lot of mats. I'll try this one. No, I'll try this one. I'll try this one. I like them all. And then but they do come in handy for loaning people though, that I can get somebody to have one. But I knew that something was touching me that I didn't, and I still don't know how to explain it completely, but there was a yoga practice fit into like a keyhole that was just exactly yoga shaped. And unlocked something in me, and it had a draw, and I started watching people. Like when I came here, Sarah was still here. I had a really good friend who now leads the Y12 here that went to the teacher training, and I watched her do that. We were dating when that was going on, so I actually in a somewhat sense, I remember exactly sitting where I was at whenever she called me and she told me she was going to take this. And just like the other day, it was split second for her. It was like, I think she signed up the week before the training started. I signed up like 6 months before the training started. Yeah. I knew this was something I was going to do, and I went ahead and did it. But she bumped into this, and the same kind of thing. It touched her heart too, and that's was a similar. When you watch it get somebody else, and you go, "Wow, man, that's really got her." There's something to that. And her story was a fabulous story too. From where she came from, this recovering her true spirit. There's another one. Another one where yoga came in and actually brought somebody around to doing something that they would have never, had they tried to write a script some time ago, they would have never been able to put that down, that someday they were going to be a yoga teacher. I can guarantee she would echo that. So I watched her go through it. So when she's buying the yoga teacher books that you all that you had to, obviously the Journey into Power is one of them. Well, she bought me one too. Oh. And so like when I got to teacher training, I had all the books. I had them under, on a bookshelf. Yeah. I didn't have to buy any books when I came to do my teacher training. But I sat and I was reading some of them I wasn't. But I read Journey into Power long before I was when I was still just coming on a weekly basis. And I actually said I read in a tree stand. I tell people I deer hunt, but really what I do is dress in camouflage and I go up in a tree and hang out and read books. That's usually what I'm doing when I'm in a tree stand. I like the solitude. I still really do hunt, but it's not. I found that it's not the hunting. It's almost meditative. It's the isolation and solitary and being out in nature. That's another place where I know my true north needle is just like pegging. It's just vibrating when I'm out in the woods and I'm out in the nature like that. And I read that and it touched me then. So this stuff like we say God doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, where these things happen. I know a lot of people flinch at the God word. I look at God like Kleenex. It's like if I asked you if you want a Kleenex and it's a generic box from Kroger, you don't go, that's not real. Or if a Coke and you like Pepsi, you don't get offended when I say, do you want a Coke? How dare you? But man, if you throw that G word around, people go, I don't go to church. It's funny the reaction, the words and the sounds, because that's really all that is. Really, it's just sounds that's coming out of our mouths that we have such funny reactions to. I still flinch at the word Jesus. There's something in my upbringing that when you say that, I'm like, I want to sit back and go, that's not for me. But God doing for me, and that's what puts you together with whatever it is, the universe conspiring to help us when we will allow it to do that. I know I was going on, and I don't even know if I had a landing spot there. I just do know that yoga has touched me and brought me to a place that I know where I was going with that. I started watching you and Sarah Smith when she was in the teacher training, and I started coming a little bit more once in a while. And at some level you put people up on these pedestals, right? That you go, wow, and you're like, they're glowing with yoga. I saw you practicing. If I was in the studio and I'd keep an eye on you to see if I could, because I knew that you had some things I didn't have. And in our world in recovery, we actually say that we will watch for people who have what you want and emulate them. Keep your eye on them. Do it. It's the old stick with the winners kind of philosophy. It's actually a really healthy thing, right? But you don't want to like let those people know you're paying. I don't let those people know that I'm paying attention. But you did. And I just want to make what I'm getting at here is that you've had a huge influence on me in a personal level from you being the owner of the studio, because at some level, Kat Scott is responsible for the level of recovery that I have in my life today because of you owning this. And it's not Scott anymore.
It's all the different names.
Yeah. Kat has been responsible for a piece of my recovery, and I like to do that, thanking people when they've had a positive influence. I don't think we do enough of that in our world anymore, of letting people know that you've touched them. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the studio. I wouldn't. I don't know that I'd be doing this. Yeah. I don't know that I'd be doing the podcast.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Because
it gives me, I have a confidence about me today. That's another thing that yoga has given me, that comfortable in my own skin thing. Mm-hmm. Where that, I can be Dan. I can be the authentic Dan today and have the balls, the wherewithal to put this stuff out to the world, to hear me, right? To say, here's my thing. Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing here, right? I mean, It takes some, I'm going to start a yoga studio. Who am I to start a yoga studio, right? Those thoughts had to go through of going, who are you kidding?
Absolutely.
And so those kind of miracles, I know a lot of times these things, and I watch it because most people take about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes to talk these stories out. We're at an hour and 10 now. Mm-hmm. I know that there's been some things that's happened to you since opening the studio that you might want to share. Trips, experiences during teacher training, opening new studios. Things. Yeah, I know there's a lot, and I want to make sure and touch on some.
Be here all night.
There's a couple of big ones, got to be some that stand out above the others.
I mean, you said trips, and it made me think of my now husband. So I met him. Honestly, it wasn't that long after I got divorced. My divorce was a long time. There was like a big build up to it, and so once it was complete, it was kind of like I had already been divorced for a while. So I met Patrick in March of 2017. And when I met him, it was, I love the way that you said that, like, your north, what did you call it? Like your north
pegging my needle, man. I could feel it vibrating.
So when I met him, it was the needle was vibrating. And I remember, like, right from the get-go, I was like coming from, I knew that any relationship that I was going to start, it was going to come from authenticity. So just from the beginning, it was like, I am going to be open, raw, vulnerable, perfectly imperfect, all those things. Like, I just knew that was going to be the foundation of any relationship, and it just worked. He was open to it, and the two of us it just worked.
Because that can be pretty intimidating and pretty scary when we start being open, when people are being open with us, and when you're being open with somebody else. That vulnerability that comes with that is not easy.
It's not, and I think that the fact that we started our relationship like that from the beginning, it just meant our relationship moved kind of like lightning speed, like in dog years or something.
Yeah.
And we decided to elope, and didn't tell anybody. Patrick managed to tell just about everybody he knew, but they were all in Lexington, so none of my people found out. But we went to backpack the Teton Crest Trail, which is a 40-mile trail along the backside of the Teton Crest, Teton Mountains. And so we decided to get married while we were out there, and we had a simple little ceremony. His mother joined us. She was one of the people in on it. And I bought some $3 flowers from a florist, not from a florist, from like a grocery store, and had a dress that was $10, $15 on Amazon, and it was just like, we kept coming back to like, well, what's authentically us? Like, there's, especially when it comes to like a wedding, and there's so much outside influence. I mean, God forbid you go on Pinterest and look at wedding stuff. I mean, just so much stuff that you should do that the society expects you to do. If you don't do this, it doesn't, like, you don't love each other, or some bullshit. I don't know what it is. And we just kept coming back to like, this is about the two of us loving each other and wanting to commit our lives to each other. We don't really need anything. Like, I wanted to hold some flowers, so we like I made the mistake of looking at like florists in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I started to have a panic attack because it was like wedding packages and this, and for only $600 you can get this, and that. I was like, oh my gosh, no! I just want to literally hold a bouquet of flowers, and you're not allowed to pick wildflowers in in the national park, so we had to go to a grocery store. And it was just so perfect, like the whole thing. Like, we put our chacos on after we got married and went and took pictures out in the park, wearing our wedding garb, and it was simple. It was very authentic to us, and it was so fun to tell everybody that I'd gotten married after keeping it a secret.
I just remember seeing the trip.
What's
on
that?
Facebook. There were some pictures and some things. But,
I posted it. I wasn't really using Facebook there for a while, so I didn't.
Maybe it wasn't then, but
I
there was
posted
some,
on Instagram.
Okay, well, you know how it does the cross posting,
Yeah.
and it might have been Instagram too. So rather than that, but I remember a little bit about the going. I'm pretty sure I do. I don't know. Did y'all go since again?
No.
Okay, so then it had to be that one.
Yeah.
Okay, as I say, if you maybe went back or something or went for another one of those, but I remember I didn't have any idea.
No. Nobody knew.
That is super cool, and that is exactly, you know, I mean, that I really ping with that too, because that's right along the line with me. Just anything outdoors and that kind of stuff. My bucket list stuff includes some trips out west that I've yet to be able to do. I've been a couple times out to Idaho and some places for work.
Yeah.
But
but I don't know. Ever since getting sober from being concerned about what other people think, I just feel like everything I do, like it's like I'm checking in with like my gut. Does this align with what my gut wants me to do?
Yeah.
And making decisions based on that like deep source of knowledge, which I think is hard to tap into. I think it takes some breaking down and some uncovering and some peeling away of layers before you can like really feel it.
Yep.
And it took a long time for me, and I feel like now I'm operating from that, and it honestly makes things a lot easier to.
It does.
To like have that sort of guiding, that North Star, the guiding light that I can check in with.
Yep.
And it's the same with running the business. You know, like I ran the business for several years without really having any sort of mission. I mean, we had a mission statement and some values, but they were sort of scraped together really quickly just while we were building a webpage. And it wasn't until I got really clear on the mission and the values of the business that like now whenever there's a business decision that needs to be made, like does it align with my values?
You can run it through that filter.
Then you run it through the filter. It just simplifies things.
Yep. That's just, I mean, it's just so parallel, and that's what, there's a lot of ways to operate in a positive manner, and this is these yogic principles are just almost like it's so parallel with like 12-step thought of now I have what's written in there. We just as simple as is a design for living that works. Very succinctly, that just I've got some operating principles to work with today, which frankly weren't handed to me. I didn't get taught that growing up. You said something else about that, getting in touch with yourself, and it sounds a little hoity-toity in a way, but in our 12-step we say, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, we practice these principles in all our affairs, and help other people give it away. We give it back away, just like that full circle of the hero journey, right? And at the end of it is going back and helping other people with the path you just came off of. Right. That spiritual awakening word. I try to dumb this stuff down a little bit because that sounds a little like I said, a little highfalutin, little hoity-toity, that spiritual awakening. But the fact is that my spirit did reawaken. It was asleep. It was something. There was something going on. It was covered up. It was what I like to say. Most time, anytime I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to get them to relate with this stuff, I talk about spiritual sickness is another thing, and people go like they want to attach that to like a lack of some kind of religion thing, and I try to correct my least try to get them to attune with what I'm saying, is that most everybody believes we have some kind of spirit, some kind of essence, some kind of consciousness, something inside of us that makes us, right? Not this vehicle we're driving around, not the outside. There's something in there. And the things like you were saying that where this friend didn't want to be a friend anymore, that stepped on that spirit, right? And started making me doubt myself. And I have multiple times of that happening to me. And what happened actually is my very spirit got sick. It got ill, just like a mental illness or just like any kind of like thing that was stepped on. And what happened through practicing these principles in 12 steps is that I reawoke that. I was able to peel that stuff off. You said I've been peeling an onion. I think you said too, we say that, of uncovering this stuff so that I could unburden my spirit so that I could become me again. And that's what recovery is to me, is this circle of coming in. My definition of recovery that I take is regaining that which was lost or stolen, which sometimes it gets stolen from us because of trauma. People do things to us, whether it's through abuse or any other kind of, maybe some kind of trauma that maybe some people close to you died, or you were in an accident or something that would really change your trajectory. I was thinking about the pinball machine, when it hits those one pegs, bounces that ball the other direction really fast. We have life events like that will change our trajectory, and the 12 steps in yoga too are both things that actually allow us to uncover that and dig and get back and mine out, unburden that original spirit that's inside of us.
Another thing that I heard that reminds me of what you're saying, we had a guest teacher, Karen Tyrone, come to 502 Power Yoga many years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And she was making a joke about how people say Baptiste yoga is like brainwashing. And she said, I don't know why that's a bad thing, because my brain was full of crap, all the things I've been telling myself, and it needed a good washing.
Yeah, I say the same thing about 12-step stuff too.
Yeah,
because people say about like the 12 steps is the brainwashing. I parallel that exact same thing. I needed a washing. I needed a cleansing. What I was doing wasn't working for me. That's really the bottom line. A lot of this stuff is that when you see, what I see when I come into the studios is the same thing I see when I come into the rooms of recovery. I see souls looking, they're seeking, they're looking for something. It looks like people are in here looking for exercise. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's how we trick you.
And it looks like people are coming into recovery looking to quit drinking and doping. But really, both sets of people are really coming to try to find themselves. They're trying to find something that's missing. At least that's my, there's always exceptions. But I think that's where the most of what we see and hear are people trying to find that path. They're on that Joseph Campbell hero journey. They're trying to find themselves. And it's too cool to because that's part of the awakening too, right? I tear up thinking about it because I'm so touched on it sometimes, because I get to do this stuff where I actually get to participate in a manner where I actually help people move down this path. I never had that, right? I mean, like you are like, how many people come to this studio?
A lot.
That are I am tearing up. That get to be touched, right? Because of this thing that this silly thing called yoga. And we know it's not silly, but this thing can have that much impact, much positive impact on individuals, which is a ripple out, because they're being positively impacted, then their kids are also, and their husbands and their wives and their aunts and their uncles or the people they work with are getting to be in that ripple.
Right.
And then that ends up being the whole community, and that's another thing about why I like 502 so much specifically. Now, maybe this is happening everywhere, and it's just where I feel. That's the same thing I say. There's other ways to get sober in the 12 steps. There really is. I'm sure there are. I'm just not aware of any of them. I'm sure there are other great yoga communities around. This is the one I'm aware of. This is the one that's mine. There's been a couple of things pop up where I was worried about maybe getting, where it wasn't going to be cool for me to be here anymore. At this studio, and then that really hurt me to think that I was going to have to I was like, I'm not accepting that. Whatever has to happen,
just like you didn't accept the
to keep that to happen. Yeah, I'm not accepting that to happen in my life. And we get to do this thing where we get to touch people and guide them in a positive way. Well, who'd have thought that we get to do this someday? Yeah. I'm just. Where are you from? Are you from here?
I'm from Louisville.
Yeah. Originally, I always tell people, I'm a Southern Indiana hillbilly. I'm from New Albany, Indiana. And here I get to do this podcast, and I get to have this positive impact on a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and get to be, just so many cool things, so many miracles happened in my life as a result of that 12-step thing that brought me to yoga. Mm-hmm. What other kind of cool things besides this trip? Or anything you want to talk about?
I got another part of my hero's journey, I guess, was when Sarah did have to move to South Carolina. Her husband had a new job, and I had spent the first, I guess it had been 2.5 years in business with her, feeling like she was the one that was in charge and I was sort of the second in charge. So when she was leaving, I had a decision to make. Like, am I going to take this on by myself? Am I going to have another business partner? Am I going to sell the business? And, like, there was a lot of fear around doing it by myself. I didn't think I wasn't Sarah. I wasn't the same person as Sarah. I didn't lead the same way Sarah did. I didn't have the same skill set that Sarah had. I had my own skill set. I had a very, like, technical, operations-based skill set that, helped get the business up and running. But I didn't have the same leadership power that she had. At least this is what I was telling myself. And so I made the very difficult decision to take it on by myself. And I'm so grateful that I did, because by doing that, it has sort of forced me into this path, like, of discovering myself as a leader. Like, I got really clear, like, okay, there's certain things that, like, I'm not sure I can lead teacher training. Mimi is more than ready to lead teacher training. So, like, I started to delegate, like, the certain things that I knew that were better served by somebody else. I put them in their court. And even just by doing that, it started to free me up to do some other things. And I started to, like, come into my own leadership style that was not the same as Sarah's, but effective. And now looking back, like, we had a teacher on our team who moved away. Her husband had a sabbatical, and so she moved for I think 8 months or so. And she had moved during this transition time. And she came back to 502 Power Yoga and rejoined the team. And she was like, Kat, you are a completely different person than you were when I left. Like, the confidence, the leader that I see it's just not the same. Like, you were in the shadow before, and now, like, you've come into your own. And I was really scared to do that. And I don't think I could have done it if Sarah hadn't basically said, like, I'm leaving, you've got this. She sort of coached me into it, like, you can do this. And I trusted her, and I went for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. That goes right along that same line. You all came together, and a certain magic happened. She left, and another kind of magic happened.
I mean, honestly, I don't know where I would be right now if it hadn't been for Sarah. She's made such an impact on my life in so many ways. Yeah,
and I'm sure I can probably say the same thing by proxy, right? Because this wouldn't be going on and wouldn't have the chance to impact me if it hadn't been for her and you two both doing this. So I remember a little bit, but I didn't get to know her much. I know she had a very strong personality. Intimidated me. Well, you both did. It's when we come down to a human level sometimes, and that's one of the things that seems to always happen when I get to do these podcasts with people, because one of the unknown blessing to me when I started doing this is that the joy that I take in, like, getting to know somebody across this way, because I don't know really how to do this without, like, this thing in between us. I'm still probably pretty good at it, but I get these opportunities where I get to sit down and we just actually focus on doing that. You know, another thing that gets me that I wasn't prepared for, the exhaustion from doing this. I've learned that, like, when I have to plan some time after this to calm down and chill after the podcast, there's a lot of emotional investment, and I like it, but I have to make sure that I put some time on the backside of my podcast recording to kind of go, okay. Sometimes I even take a little nap. Yeah,
that's how I feel after I lead a workshop.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, that's another thing. You've given of yourself like that, and then you need a little time to take back. Anything else you want to talk about? Well, a lot of times, like, when people do these stories, and I know you never can get everything out, and the point of this is not really to give somebody's life story either. One of the things I kind of like is when we do this in recovery rooms, that people do work speakers around, and I don't know if you're aware of how that operates, but we have speaker meetings where somebody gets up and tells their story. And they do this, and usually by the time it's a 1 hour meeting, but by the time you do the introductory readings at the beginning and we have a little closing at the end, you end up with 40 minutes or so to talk. And you feel very incomplete. That's another term I've picked up out of yoga teaching is, are you complete? And I watch people as I sit here and do this, and there's an air of like, okay, I'm complete. Now, it doesn't mean that they've told their whole life story. That's not the point.
Yeah,
the point is, I got complete in this moment, and you kind of see a sigh that people will go. They'll sit there and there'll be a minute of silence, and they'll go, I think that's all. Yeah. You go, yeah, cool. Yeah. I like it. I've enjoyed having you on here. I know there's a lot more to the story.
Save that for my memoir.
Yeah. Did you ever think of doing that? Write a book? It's
crossed my mind.
You have a fantastic story, no doubt.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's we ought to all be encouraged to do. It's so easy and accessible now. I mean, it's not easy to write. I'm not saying that, but you can publish on Amazon today.
Yeah.
Without even having anything. You just have to you just type up the document and do it. I got a buddy that's in the nicotine quitting world, and he, which is a whole nother world. He puts out in his day count these little corny, he calls them dad jokes, and they're terrible, but they're funny. They make me giggle every time. And he wrote them all, and he's got 1,000 of them in a book, and he just turned it loose in Amazon the other day, for like $5.29. 1,000 dad jokes.
I know what I'm buying Patrick for Father's Day.
Yeah. Well, tell me, because and it's Kindle only too.
Okay.
Yeah. That's I have it in my phone. I get to look like I'm funny once in a while because I will lift them out of there and poke them out into my groups. I really do appreciate you sitting down with me. I appreciate you just as a fellow yogi, and for what I got out of being able to attend 502 Power Yoga's teacher training program. We didn't even talk about, you opened up a second studio that's over in my home court. So that's the one I generally attend more times than not. Although I love the Highland energy here also. So I always try to make it
to Jeffersonville in an hour.
Are you?
Yeah, 6 o'clock class.
Or teaching or taking?
Take it.
Take it, yeah. It's just a blessing to have gotten to know you and to be able to do this thing called life in one another's presence. It's I
acknowledge you for taking your own ripple and rippling out and affecting so many other people and positively impacting so many people's lives.
Yeah, I wear my teacher training bracelet nearly every day.
Cool.
I still it's on my and just to top that off, and this is something that made me, and it means something to me. It would tear me up again. Is that she said that she infused it with the power of the lighthouse. And I really do, it feels a little arrogant in a way to like recognize that. But I know I'm actually getting to do that. And when I hear it from somebody because she's another person that inspires me too. And the whole 502 staff inspires me. But to have that really, really touched me to have her grant me that power, so to speak.
That's what you're doing right here. You are a lighthouse right in this moment.
Cool. Thank you. We will sign off on that. I'll do my little commercials real quick again too. Spiritual. We will. I'm going to ask if can we take a picture?
Yeah.
Because I like to put people's faces with the names on the website.
Totally.
I don't know, and just a little two of us and doing that, and so we can go to the website and see pictures of the people who are on the podcast. It's spiritualunderground.org. You'll hear Darren Frank's music wrapped around the podcast, and go to Amazon and get 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. If you're in the Louisville area, come to 502 Power Yoga. The address is
2210 Dundee or 300 Missouri
Avenue in Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Putting me on the spot. I forgot.
Right, yeah, I know. That's like when I'd ask people about their sobriety day. If they're not ready for it, they'll stumble on it, and I'm like,
easier thing to do. Just throw in 502.
Yeah, Google it.
In the Google
we learned this, and this is another thing I learned in teacher training is GTS. Google that shit. Thank you all for listening, and tune in next time, and peace out.
just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said. Only did the things they would approve of. Lock away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a rope